What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Eluda Racing. So in this video, as you can see, we've got the cart prepped, and this is going to be a continuation of the lift kit. We're going to call this part 2, rear end of the lift kit. So as you can see, like I said, I've got it jacked up, wheels pulled off, and basically the kit was really vague as far as the instructions for the rear end. It gave a pretty basic diagram, and really that's about it. It didn't really give you a whole lot of directions or instructions as far as what to do. So what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of looking over the rear end of the cart and looking at the kit, and I'm going to see what I need to do, what tools I need, and I'm just kind of prepping to start tearing this apart. But what we're going to be doing first and foremost is I'm going to undo the shock. I sprayed everything in the back end with penetrating oil to try to avoid the shocks snapping off like they did on the front end. So that's first and foremost. Is I went ahead and everything has been sprayed with penetrating oil, and that's been a couple days now, so I'm kind of hoping that I'm able to just get these shock bolts off without snapping them off, because I did not order rear shocks. When I damaged the front ones, I just ordered front ones because I didn't think about it. I probably should have ordered all 4 and just said to hell with it and started off fresh with all 4, but you live and you learn, and I didn't do that. So now I'm stuck with trying to not break these. That way I can get this kit all knocked out in one night. And that's pretty much my game plan. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to crack loose both shocks, and once I get the shocks off, then I'm going to do. I've noticed a lot of other people online, rather than undoing both leaf springs and everything all at once and having the whole rear end loose, they do one side at a time, and then that way they can use the leaf spring on the opposite side to support the rear end. Because with that motor and that rear end, you're probably talking 150 to 200 pounds. It's pretty heavy. And you know, I mean, you're out here working by yourself, it could be dangerous, or it could fall, and you got wiring and stuff like that, so you don't want to do any damage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the shock. I'm going to support the rear end with jack stand, and then I'm going to undo the leaf spring, because you have to take the leaf spring off. And as you can see, basically the way you achieve the lift on this is you're going to do it would be called like an axle flip. I'm going to be taking the axle, and I'm going to be taking the leaf spring, and the leaf spring is going to be put on top of the axle, and then there's going to be a spacer on top of that. That's how you achieve the 6-inch lift. So as you can see right now, leaf spring's here, axle's on top. Leaf spring's going to get taken off, it's going to get put on top, and then there's a bracket, and it's going to be way up here, which then pushes the axle down, and that brings the cart up. That's how you get your lift. So I'm going to do one side at a time, and then that way, like I said, I don't have to fight with the rear end and everything like that and worry about it dropping or any wiring or just anything like that. So I'm going to start grabbing some tools, and we're going to try getting this shock off. I might put a little bit of heat to that nut to try to heat it up, but by doing that I got to be careful that I don't burn up those grommets, because I don't have new shock grommets either, so got to be careful to not damage those. So I'm going to go ahead and try to loosen them up and be gentle and see what we got. Alright, so as you can see, I got quite a bit done in the rear end. I was going to actually try to video this as I was doing it, but this rear kit, not so easy. So I ended up having to do a lot of it, and now I'm going to try to catch up for you and explain to you what I did. Originally I was saying that we could do one side and then the other, but the problem is with this kit compared to others, with this one being a full 6-inch lift, you can't undo the one side only and then move on to the other side, because what will happen is the leaf spring on the opposite side will not allow the rear end to drop down enough in order to put the riser and then put the spring on top of that riser. So what you ended up having to do is you can leave most of the other side intact, but you have to undo the shock, and you have to do at least the back part of the leaf spring, which then will allow the whole rear end to drop down to then give you enough clearance to get the spring up on top, the leaf spring up on top of the riser, and then get back into the mounting perches. So that was the issue with that, and that was where a lot of the problem was. And then just dealing with all these old U-bolts and stuff, even though I used penetrating oil on there, I mean, this stuff was just rusty, and I ended up having to use heat and stuff like that to get it off. I did not break any shocks, so that's nice. But yeah, it ended up being quite a bit of a pain in the ass. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. But anyway, the riser is on, and basically what that does is that gets bolted to the old spring perch or leaf perch, and then you put the leaf on top, and that's how that goes. The leaf spring is back in place. I went ahead and greased up all that stuff, so that's all set. And yeah, I mean, I'm plugging away at it, and everything's kind of just in there, and it's loose because when I go to do the other side, I don't know if I'm going to need to move the rear end forward or back or anything like that. I might have to do a little bit of fine tuning. So I'm going to get everything in place, and then I will go ahead and do the final torque down for everything. So yeah, we're going to keep on plugging away at this and keep on doing what we got to do to get this done. Alright, so we're on to the passenger side. Now, as you can see, I went ahead and I prepped this side and I took everything off. And I just wanted to kind of bring you guys along as I reassembled this side, just so you could kind of see all the steps involved in putting the rear end back together. I mean, the teardown's pretty self-explanatory. You got to pretty much get it to this point, leaf springs off, shock disconnected, U-bolts off. You know, I mean, you pretty much got to take everything off other than the rearmost shackles for the leaf spring. So everything else is off. You don't have to disconnect, or I shouldn't say you don't have to remove the brake cable on this side, because once the other side has been dropped down, you've got enough slack on this side to leave the brake cable hooked up. So that is about the only thing. That and all the wiring for the motor needs to stay on, hooked on as well. But basically, when you're at this point and you've got everything off, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put that lift block on, or that riser block, whichever you want to call it. And that's pretty straightforward. And one thing you have to remember on this is this does have a taper. When it sits on the ground, it's lower in the front. That is going to point towards the front of the cart, like that. You don't want to put it on the wrong way. I don't know that it would bolt up the wrong way, but nonetheless, you need to do this for the pinion angle. So once you go to put this on, it's a little bit tighter than the axle tube diameter, so you need to kind of force it on there, and it'll kind of snap down on there. And then what you're going to do is, these are the only bolts that this kit essentially comes with, is you get 4 nuts and bolts, and you're going to bolt this bracket down to the spring perch that is welded onto the axle tube. Alright, so once you get the 4 nuts and bolts in place, I went ahead and I did them loose, finger tight, and then I'm going to go ahead and tighten them down with the impact. But the nuts and bolts are basically 11/16 nuts, 5/8 bolts, and the nuts are pretty hard to get on. I'm using a box end wrench just because you can't really get a socket wrench in there all that well. But you're going to go ahead and you're going to torque these 4 bolts down, nuts and bolts down, and then once you do that, you got to we're going to be moving on to the leaf spring and the shock mount bracket, which comes in the kit. You have to reuse the old hardware as far as the old U-bolts and the new, or the old leaf spring bolts as well. Now I went ahead and I ordered new U-bolts. They haven't came in, but I'm going to go ahead and put the kit together with the old stuff, and then once it comes in and I get time, I'm just going to swap it out to some new ones. But I just wanted to get this thing back together, and the old bolts are fine. Computer glitch there, but yeah, the old bolts are fine, but I'm going to go ahead and redo them just because I want to have everything new. So as I get time and more money and stuff like that, I'm going to slowly swap out some of the stuff. I want to do new leaf spring mounts and some stuff like that, and just have everything all new as far as bolts, hardware, fasteners, and all that stuff, just to complete the kit better. So let's go ahead and lock this down. Alright, so we got the mounting perch all tightened up, and now we're going to move on to the leaf spring. And I mentioned this before, make sure you clean up your leaf spring bolts and grease these up, and you want to grease up those bushings too, because you want, not that these have a lot of play in the suspension, but you want everything to move freely, and you want the suspension to have its full articulation and full suspension travel. It's going to make it ride a lot better. And with the bigger tires, you know, if you're out off-roading or whatever, having a little bit of fun, this back shackle is supposed to move as this suspension comes up. That shackle, the spring straightens out, which makes it longer. That shackle needs to pivot out. So those shackles need to move back and forth freely. So you want to make sure you clean that up and grease that up properly. And you want everything to move freely and be able to travel without any restrictions or any squeaking or anything like that, because it'll tear up your bushings, it'll tear up your grommets and all that stuff. So clean it up and grease it up. So once you get the leaf, I just have the leaf sitting here in place. It's just sitting on top of that perch. Go ahead and get that bolt in. Drive it through. And then I would put both bolts in before I tighten anything down, that way, just in case you got to fight with it or anything like that. Alright. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this with the camera in my hand. Alright, so we got the leaf spring in place. Leaf spring bolts in place. We've got the U-bolts on the riser, and then the upper adapter plate for the shock mount. And basically now everything is just needs to be torqued down. So normally what I like to do on something like this, where you're doing like a perch like this, rather than doing both on this side and then both on the other side, I would kind of do a crisscross pattern, snug them up first and then go over them and then tighten them the rest of the way down. Snug your shock mount up, and then last thing is make sure that your shackle and the front bolt are both tightened down for the leaf spring. And at that point, the suspension lift is done on this. Then we can throw on the big tires and let it sit down, check it, make sure the suspension goes up. Whenever you do a suspension lift kit on anything, whether it be a golf cart or a truck, I mean a Jeep, UTV, whatever, you always want to make sure that your suspension articulates all the way. You have no binding, nothing that's preventing it from working properly, because just because it's new or whatever, it doesn't mean it's right, and it doesn't mean it's going to function properly. So before you go throwing the tires on it and jumping on it and taking off, you want to just kind of give it a once over. And then the other thing that I would highly recommend is, after you've driven it, I'm going to drive it around for a week or a couple days, let my daughter drive it, and then I'm going to recheck and go over every nut and bolt that I touched on this, and I'm going to re-torque them down, and I'm going to verify that nothing is coming loose. Sometimes you might think, like this spring or whatever, you think you got it right, and then it settles, and then you get slop or something like that. So you always want to re-torque stuff down. I probably wouldn't go a week. I said a week. I would probably go a day or two, check it, and then maybe check it again in a week. I mean, it doesn't take that long. You don't even need to pull the rim or pull the tires off to go over the bolts. You can get at them pretty easy now that the lift kit's on there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to snug these up real quick. Alright, yeah, for the life of me, I have no idea what EzGo, what the kind of bolts they or nuts they use on these, but they're 9/16. And once you put the socket on there and you start tightening this shit down, it does not want to come off the socket. And I mean, it was an absolute nightmare. I mean, if you guys, I would definitely, next time I do a lift kit, excuse me, next time I do a lift kit, just order, if your kit does not come with new U-bolts, order them in advance. Don't even mess with these old U-bolts. Hack them off with the torch or a Sawzall or cut off wheel, whatever, and start off with the new ones. Don't even mess with these things because they are an absolute nightmare to take off, a nightmare to put back on. They're rusty. Maybe for you guys that are down south, you might not have the rust issue like what we do up here up north. But yeah, I mean, definitely just get new U-bolts because these things made this kit that much harder to deal with, and you know, it makes it just to be a real pain in the ass. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lock down these U-bolts and throw the tires on, and we'll get this thing off the jack and jack stands, and we'll take a look at it. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Little Racing. As you can see, the lift kit is complete, and we got the wheels on there too. So I just wanted to do a little closing video so you could see it before and after of the cart. 6-inch lift kit, drop axle, front end, lift blocks on the rear, 23-inch tires. Got about 14 inches of ground clearance now with this lift kit. Lose a little bit of ground clearance with the front steering arm right there, but these tires are massive. That's the nice thing about this 6-inch kit rather than the 4 and the 5. You can't go with a 23-inch tire and get the clearance and not have to worry about it rubbing or hip bottoming out or anything like that. And this is top notch all the way. So just wanted to close out the lift kit and show you a little bit of after. And we got a lot more to do on the cart. We're working towards getting the wrap done, and I also have new seat covers, and then I have a back seat on the way as well. So a lot more to do and a lot more to go, but it's coming along really, really good. So I hope you like it, and you know, if you have any comments or anything, you know, share your opinions, your feelings, whatever, suggestions. I'm open to anything. So like always, you know, like and subscribe and turn on notifications, and that way you can keep updated with me on this journey as I go along and turn this into a badass golf cart. So talk to you later. Take care.